Hello, everyone. Welcome back to 3 News Now. I'm Stephanie Haney. It's Tuesday, December 29th. Thanks for choosing to be here for your top stories from WKYC.com and our WKYC app. There are a lot of really impactful things happening for people here in Northeast Ohio today, so let's dive right into it. The Ohio Supreme Court on Monday has issued a ruling to stop the collection of the nuclear plant subsidy. This is the subsidy that's tied to HB 6, the bill that has resulted in former Speaker of the House, Larry Householder, being charged with federal racketeering charges. So on Monday, they issued a stay to stop the collection of fees from nearly every electric customer in the state starting on January 1st. Now, these fees would have subsidized 2 nuclear power plants, part of that bill, and this comes from the Ohio Supreme Court a week after we started to see this happening in other areas around the state of Ohio. Just a week ago in Franklin County, a judge issued a preliminary injunction to stop the collection of these fees. In Franklin County, it was Common Pleas Judge Chris Brown who said to not do so would give the okay that bribery is allowed in the state of Ohio and that any ill-gotten gains can be received. Now, as a reminder, this is all tied to a $1 billion bailout, which led to the arrest of Householder and 4 others in what authorities called the biggest bribery scandal in state history. To break it down, Householder is accused of leading an effort to secretly move forward this legislation funded by Akron-based First Energy to win the legislation being approved for the nuclear plant subsidies and also to stop a referendum on the bill that would have done away with the subsidy after the bill passed in the Ohio legislature. Now, this bill, by the way, this law is still on the books in Ohio because the Ohio legislature has not yet acted, even though it is part of this federal racketeering investigation. But as of now, the Ohio Supreme Court has stopped the collection of those subsidies, so that will not begin in January as it otherwise would have under this law that is still on the books. Now let's talk a little bit more about your money. Here in the city of Cleveland, if you have ordered from DoorDash recently, you might have noticed a Cleveland fee on your DoorDash order. I ordered from DoorDash just last night, actually, through DoorDash and noticed the Cleveland fee, and I thought to myself, never seen that before. That's very interesting. Well, today, Cleveland City Council President Kevin Kelly is slamming DoorDash for adding the fee to orders. Now, I talked to a representative from DoorDash today, and that person told me that this fee is a direct result of the fact that the city of Cleveland voted to limit the commissions that restaurants have to pay companies like DoorDash. So not just DoorDash, but we're talking about Uber Eats, Seamless, Grubhub, all of these companies that are food delivery services. So the city of Cleveland voted to limit that. Mayor Frank Jackson signed it into effect, and it went into effect immediately. And as a result, DoorDash added that $1 Cleveland fee passed on to the person making the order. Now, DoorDash says this fee is used for operating costs, which include paying the DoorDashers, which are the people who deliver the food, but also background checks on those people and other operating costs, and they have a whole blog about it. But Kevin Kelly had very fiery words for DoorDash. He said that it was corporate greed and that the city council would see what it could do immediately in order to have a legislative impact on this Cleveland fee that has been passed on to the consumer. Now let's talk a little bit more about your money. That $600 stimulus check has been signed into law by President Donald Trump, although he's still pushing for the $2,000. Well, in the House, U.S. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi did bring it to a vote to increase that amount from $600 to $2,000, and Republicans even joined with Democrats in the House in order to pass it in the House. Well, next step, it has to go on to the Senate, right? Well, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has blocked the push to bring it to an immediate vote. He said instead that the Senate would, quote, begin a process to address the issue. Now, a growing number of Republicans, including the 2 Republican senators who are part of the runoff election, the incumbent senators in Georgia, which is coming up on January 5th, and the result of which will determine the balance of power in the Senate, have said that they will support the $2,000 check. However, McConnell is holding steady, and he's not bringing that to a vote right away. He says that they will begin the process. Now, Senate Democratic Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said that they should not adjourn until the Senate holds a vote on the issue. But McConnell is not giving any indication of how he plans to proceed when it comes to a vote on those $2,000 checks. And with that, let's talk about the reason why we're talking about these $2,000 checks, COVID-19, and specifically here in the state of Ohio. Here are the latest numbers that we have from the Ohio Department of Health. Cases are up significantly from yesterday. That number is at 7,256 new reported COVID cases in the state of Ohio, and a big jump in the number of reported deaths. Yesterday, that was in the low 60s. Today, 151 people have been reported to have lost their lives due to COVID-19. Our daily positive rate is also up, according to the latest data from the Ohio Department of Health. That latest number, 15.5% of all COVID tests done on the latest day we have the figures for coming back positive. And the 7-day average is now at 12.6% coming back positive over 7 days. New hospitalizations also way up. 560 new hospitalizations related to COVID reported in the last 24 hours. The number of people in the hospital, though, staying about the same. That's at 4,516 right now. Also, the number of people in the ICU right now staying about the same. That's at 1,110 from what we saw yesterday. We did see an increase in new ICU admissions, 52 new ICU admissions in the last 24 hours. And the total number of hospital beds that are available as a percentage of what we have available here in the state is down a bit. That is now at 28%. Now let's take a look at the national and the global COVID-19 numbers. These numbers come from Johns Hopkins University. Here in the U.S., the total number of reported cases is now at 19,410,043, and the total number of reported deaths is at 336,325. We've got 4% of the global population, but our percentage of the cases is ticking up slightly. Our percentage of the deaths is staying the same. Right now, the U.S. has 23.8% of all COVID cases and 18.9% of all COVID-related deaths. Globally, according to Johns Hopkins University, the total number of cases reported is now at 81,681,986, and the total number of deaths reported globally is now at 1,781,713. Now, as we continue to figure out how to live with COVID-19 and how to have things continue on, the Cleveland Cavaliers got news about how many fans they'll be allowed to have in Rocket Mortgage FieldHouse. Now, with the Cavs off to a 3-0 start, they would like to have as many people as they can safely have in the facility. And Governor Mike DeWine today indicated that a variance would be approved for the Cavs to host 10% of capacity of Rocket Mortgage FieldHouse. So that's 1,944 fans. This is a big increase from the 300 fans that they were previously permitted to have in the field house. But along with this, Governor Mike DeWine said the Cavs have to limit each pod or seating group to no more than 6. We've talked about these pods before. That's similar to the method that's being used at First Energy Stadium for the Cleveland Browns. So no more than 6 per pod. And also, here's something we haven't seen the governor say before, but he is specifically pointing out that using plexiglass is not an alternative to social distancing for spectator seating. It will be the Cavs' responsibility to monitor and enforce the social distancing requirement, prohibition on congregating among spectators, and the other provisions outlined in the sports order. Now, we are definitely entering new territory here because, of course, Rocket Mortgage FieldHouse is an indoor facility. But the Cavs did say that they have implemented HVAC updates in order to help with the ventilation and that sort of thing. Very interesting note that the governor is making there about the plexiglass, though, because if you have been out in public at all, maybe you've popped into a restaurant to get takeout, maybe you are someone who has been comfortable being in a restaurant. We've seen these plexiglass dividers at bars, for example, and here, in this instance, DeWine is saying that plexiglass is not a substitute for social distancing. Something to think about there. Continuing in the sports world, the Cleveland Browns will face the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday, and now we know that the Steelers will be sitting their starting quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger, and instead they'll be starting their second-string quarterback, Mason Rudolph. Now, this game on Sunday doesn't really mean much to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've already clinched the AFC North Division title. They already have a guaranteed spot in the playoffs. They could improve in their playoff seeding, but Pittsburgh doesn't have control over that. They could potentially pass the Buffalo Bills for the number 2 seed in the AFC playoffs. But again, what the Steelers do doesn't have an impact on that. So a lot of people have been speculating that the Steelers might not start their starters against the Cleveland Browns. Also, other things to keep in mind, the Steelers did not have a traditional bye week throughout this season because of COVID-19 related rescheduling early on, and Pittsburgh is coming off a stretch where it played 5 games over 26 days. So with all of that said, head coach Mike Tomlin has said that he will not be starting Ben Roethlisberger. He will be taking a seat, resting for the game. Now, to add to this story, this will be the Steelers' first game at First Energy Stadium since last season's fight between Mason Rudolph and Brown star defensive end Myles Garrett, who was then suspended for the rest of the 2019 season after hitting Mason Rudolph in the head with his helmet. So those two will be facing off against each other for the first time since that happened. We also don't know yet at this point, in addition to Roethlisberger, how many other Steelers players will be taking a seat from the starting lineup for the Steelers as a precautionary measure. But here's what Tomlin said on Tuesday. He said that they are making a full effort to win the game. He said this is an NFL team that will go play minus Ben and maybe another player or two, but he didn't give any indication of who that other player or two might be. But obviously, we will anxiously be awaiting any information we have in that regard. And if we know anything more, we will bring it to you on WKYC.com. And as we wrap up 2020, of course, we're looking at the top stories of the year. Let's run down WKYC's most read sports stories of 2020. Coming in at number 3, of course, we've got a top 10 on WKYC.com, by the way, but I'm just going to cover number 3 right now. Number 3, speaking of the Steelers, was the story that Baker Mayfield passes Ben Roethlisberger for the most quarterback wins at First Energy Stadium. Yep, before this season, it is true that the winningest quarterback at First Energy Stadium was Pittsburgh Steelers starting quarterback Ben Roethlisberger. But that changed this year when Cleveland beat the Houston Texans and Mayfield became the stadium's all-time winningest quarterback. That was a very welcome change here in Cleveland. At number 2, another Baker Mayfield story, when he was quoting TLC songs following the Browns' win versus the New York Giants. Now, I do need to mention that one Browns fan did message me on Twitter and said that Baker Mayfield might not be getting as much credit as he deserves for that pop culture reference because there's a movie called The Other Guys starring Michael Keaton, Mark Wahlberg, and Will Ferrell, and a very talented cast where Michael Keaton's character quotes TLC songs throughout the movie. He quotes it 3 or 4 times: No Scrubs, Waterfalls, Creep, Ain't Too Proud to Beg. And it's possible that Mayfield might have been quoting The Other Guys, quoting TLC, but reached out to Baker, didn't hear back. So if anybody gets this to Baker Mayfield, he could confirm. We would love to know if we can give him just a little extra credit for being a little more crafty, him and his quarterback room, with those pop culture references. And the number 1 sports story, the number 1 most read story from 2020 goes all the way back to January. It's when Cleveland Cavaliers center Tristan Thompson was ejected from the game after patting former teammate Jay Crowder's behind. That is the headline. This was in a January loss to the Memphis Grizzlies, and Thompson slapped former teammate Crowder on the rear end, and then he was ejected from the game for what turned out to be his second technical foul. And that is the most read sports story from WKYC.com this year. That wraps it up for 3 News Now for Tuesday, December 29th. I will see you next up on What's New with your trending stories in the Clicking in Cleveland segment, and I'll see you back here tomorrow for more 3 News Now. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe to 3 News Now as a podcast and also subscribe to my podcast, 3 Things to Know with Stephanie Haney. This week, we've done a 2020 year in review. I'm joined by Russ Mitchell, Mark Namick, and Romney Smith, and we break down pop culture, politics, of course, the pandemic, sports, and social justice here in Ohio over the past 360 some days. So make sure you check that out. You can find that on WKYC.com, linked up to all of your favorite platforms, or you can just search for 3 Things to Know with Stephanie Haney in your favorite podcast platform. All right, everyone, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Stay safe and be well. I'm Stephanie Haney.